DocTalk is brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.
Hey folks, thanks for joining me today on DocTalk. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson. My guest today is Dr. Brian Lubbers, who's the Director of Microbiology here at the Diagnostic Lab. And we're going to talk about something that's core to animal health programs, that is getting a proper diagnosis. Things that you can do from a history to sample collection and working with your veterinarian and much more. Stay tuned after these messages.
As dependable as the sunrise, in dairy parlors, open pastures, on ranches and feed yards across America. A place where reputation is more than a name, where the science of healthier animals is a way of life. It's the responsibility that drives who we are and what we do. Every decision, every day. It's your livelihood and our responsibility.
Closed caption brought to you by AgriLabs, the perfect pairing of performance and value.
This segment brought to you by the new Hired Hand Portable Cow Sprayer. For more information, visit cowsprayer.com. Brian, welcome to the show.
Morning, Dan.
Folks, Dr. Brian Lubbers, it's a pleasure to have him here on the show. He's the Director of Microbiology for the Kansas Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. He has national and international experience with not only microbiology, but pharmacology. Been spending a little bit of time on the road, hadn't you?
Yeah.
The veterinary feed directive's got everybody hopping, but especially this doctor spending time with producers, spending time with decision makers and getting it right. And today's topic is about getting the right diagnosis. And I'm sure you have stories upon stories of cases that come into the diagnostic laboratory that are opportunities that we save people's livelihoods, and sometimes when we get the wrong samples and maybe don't get exactly what we want.
Yeah, and I think too, there's probably the stories we don't know, Dan, which is people that don't send samples at all. And I think that's really a good place to start is when we talk about getting the right diagnosis. Very few things in veterinary medicine can we tell what is going on in the disease just by either looking at the live animal and our kind of overall physical exam, or even if it's an animal that died, just the things that we see on the necropsy. Many of the things that we have and deal with as diseases look very much like the others. So I think that's even more than what we see as far as samples in the laboratory.
Yeah, and I think some of the people have just given up. You know, we call it undifferentiated fever, or and that means why say undifferentiated fever? Just say fever.
Right.
But I guess that's really all we know. And so, let's start with that physical exam and different things that you see that we need to be doing.
Sure, and it always starts with, especially when we talk about food animals, those are prey species, and so we want to try to start with observing the animal in the pen or in the pasture. We know that when you bring an animal into the chute, what we see as far as physical characteristics, we're going to miss some things because they're not displaying their natural behaviors once we get them into that environment. But certainly, most veterinarians and most treatment protocols or exam protocols, we do want to look at temperature, right? We'll look at body temperature, but we'll look at a whole host of other things. And depending on what you see, certain body systems, we may dig deeper into those. So if we think it's a gastrointestinal or digestive disease, we'll start there and look at some things. If we think it's respiratory, we may look those. But that's kind of where we start with that physical exam.
Okay. So also working with the veterinarian, obviously very important. And then when an animal does die, getting some at least some gross pathology with proper samples to get the correct diagnosis.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things too, I think a lot of producers are in the mindset, well, if one dies, accidents happen or whatever, and we'll just go on. But it's really important to collect those samples early with that very first case so that you're ahead of the game and not wait for the second or third animal to be affected.
Absolutely. My dad used to say it was easier for him in veterinary practice to sell a vaccine for a few $1,000s than to sell a diagnosis for a few dollars.
Right.
And the crippling ramifications it could have on you and your herd, it's worth getting the veterinarian out there and doing this right. When we come back, more with Dr. Brian Lubbers on some examples of different cases. Thanks for watching DocTalk.
This Meet the Future Veterinarian is brought to you by Zuprevo. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Kathleen Morris is the 5th generation of a Texas ranching family, and her mother is a veterinarian, so it was natural for her to choose a career in veterinary medicine. Her main interests are in equine dentistry and podiatry, but she also loves working with small ruminants and livestock. After graduation, she will spend the summer working in Alberta, and then return to Texas to work full-time in a mixed practice.
Some call it a come-from-behind victory, an unlikely win, a reversal of fortune, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. This is our moment, our victory dance, because we choose confidence. We choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Ask your veterinarian to prescribe Zuprevo. Zuprevo is a fast-acting, long-lasting BRD treatment that you can count on to get the job done. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo from Merck Animal Health.
The new Better Horses Network is worldwide, presented by Lucas Oil, featuring worldwide radio and TV with iconic hosts like Al Dunning, Sharon Camarillo, Ernie Rodina, Lindy Birch, and Craig Cameron. With American Cowboy, Horse and Rider, Brushy Creek, Cavenders, and Ride TV. Worldwide radio and TV, the all-new Better Horses Network.
Do your cattle struggle with pink eye, BRD, or another disease? Contact Newport Laboratories for a customized solution. Our custom-made vaccines are produced using the specific diseases found in your area. These USDA licensed vaccines offer potential cost savings on vaccine and labor. Contact your veterinarian or Newport Laboratories the next time your cattle are in need of a custom solution. Newport Laboratories custom-made vaccine, because every situation is different.
This segment brought to you by the new Hired Hand Portable Cow Sprayer. For more information, visit cowsprayer.com.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson here with Dr. Brian Lubbers, who is the Director of Microbiology for the Kansas State Veterinary Diagnostic Lab here in the College of Veterinary Medicine at Kansas State University. We've been talking about getting the right diagnosis, and we've talked about proper history, good physical exam, working with your veterinarian on a necropsy, getting the proper samples so we can get the proper diagnosis. And you have some examples of different things that could go on, bovine respiratory disease, diarrheal diseases, that maybe we don't always get the right diagnosis.
Yeah, and I think it's important to realize, the reason that diagnosis is so important is because it affects our treatment decisions and it affects potentially our prevention decisions in the future, right? And so when you talk about, if you see a calf in a pen, maybe that calf's a little bit depressed, that calf may be breathing heavy, just doesn't look right. You get that calf in, it may have a fever, maybe it's borderline. Really, in my mind, I can think, okay, the easy diagnosis is bovine respiratory disease. We're going to treat it with an antibiotic and we're going to go on with life. But some of those times you look at that and that calf may actually be affected by acidosis. An antibiotic certainly won't help the calf and may actually cause some resistance issues both in that particular animal, that group of animals, and maybe for the person consuming that product down the line, and will have no effect on the acidosis. And so, just something as simple as that, looking into one kind of syndrome that could very much be one of two very different diseases, I think it's important. And certainly we could do that, when we look at the necropsy findings, looking at a set of lungs that's affected. Maybe it is respiratory disease. What's the viral component, which again, the antibiotic has no impact. What's the bacterial component? Really digging into those cases a little more. really helps the producer to make better decisions as far as treatment goes.
Absolutely. And getting that history, understanding how many days those calves have on feed, can also aid in the diagnosis. I think that a lot of times we rely so much on the physical exam, but if you don't understand or don't talk about the history of what's happened leading up to this, really isn't going to do you much good.
And that's a really important piece if you're a producer or a veterinarian that is going to submit samples to the diagnostic lab. Very rarely do we get those really good histories, and sometimes it makes total difference between us and the lab being able to really nail down the diagnosis or not. And most of the time, if we feel like there's a piece of information missing, we'll call the veterinarian, we'll call the producer, we'll try to get more information, but providing it up front certainly can speed your case along and get you that answer a little bit faster too.
I think that there's also a disconnect. You look at our public health offices that provides health. I go in and get in our public health to get my flu shot every year. The diagnostic lab is really that. It is a state-funded organization to provide service to the producers. And they need to be taking advantage of this state-supported system for them and their herds.
Sure. And in that kind of theme, one of the things that we do, we certainly provide services for the individual case, but our goal is also to track diseases across the state so we get kind of that cumulative picture of what's going on out in the field.
Perfect. When we come back, we're going to talk about some examples on diarrheal diseases and cases right here on DocTalk.
The BQA Tip of the Day, sponsored by Beringer Engelheim Vetmedica, Inc.
Hello, Dr. Nels Lindberg here with Production Animal Consultation and Animal Medical Center out of Great Bend, Kansas. And today for your BQA tip, we're thinking about VFDs. VFDs, you're all kind of getting in tune with them and figuring out maybe what you got to do. If you're not, you really need to catch up and get with your veterinarian and start having those conversations. But first and foremost, you need a valid veterinary client-patient relationship. And if you don't have one of those, you really need to address that and get after it and get that done. From there, work with your veterinarian closely so that you're not scrambling to get those things done. And that's what our biggest concern is people prolonging and waiting to actually get those things done. And come January, February, when you need a VFD, you can't get one done in timely fashion like what you really want. So get with your veterinarian and get after it and get it done and keep at it.
Say this is a calf that's been run through the chute a few too many times. Going through the chute stresses cattle, causing them not to eat like they should. Luckily, Pyramid 5 plus Presponse SQ provides proven protection against key respiratory diseases in a single shot, with just one trip through the chute. Talk to your veterinarian about Pyramid 5 plus Presponse SQ, and soon your calves will relax and eat like a whole different animal.
No matter where, no matter why, the Veterinary Health Center at Kansas State University is committed to providing quality patient care to animals and exceptional customer service to their owners. From routine checkups to emergency and specialty care, our world-renowned specialists and experienced professionals are here to discover, to teach, and to heal.
Let us know.
How can I help?
How can we help?
Do your cattle struggle with pink eye, BRD, or another disease? Contact Newport Laboratories for a customized solution. Our custom-made vaccines are produced using the specific diseases found in your area. These USDA licensed vaccines offer potential cost savings on vaccine and labor. Contact your veterinarian or Newport Laboratories the next time your cattle are in need of a custom solution. Newport Laboratories custom-made vaccine, because every situation is different.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
Folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson with Dr. Brian Lubbers. We work at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine, where Dr. Lubbers serves as the Director of Microbiology for the Diagnostic Laboratory here. And Brian, let's jump into diarrheal disease. I know you have some examples or different bugs that cause you some concern that we make sure we're tracking.
Sure, and with the example with BRD, the decision is about treating the individual calf or the group of animals. Are we giving a drug that's actually going to work or not? With diarrheal diseases, if you take that calf that has scours and he's 7 to 10 days old, that kind of the history, we talked about how important that was, but there are certainly a number of viral and bacterial components that could be causing diarrhea or scours in that age of calf. When we look at getting the right diagnosis there, for me, it then becomes really that public health issue. And so if this calf is affected, if he has diarrhea because of salmonella or an E. coli or cryptosporidium, that's something that you as a producer, you get that scours on your boots or your coveralls, and you take it into your house, and it could certainly cause issues with your family. So, there's other reasons beyond just the health of the animal, making some more cost-effective or even effective treatment decisions, but then it becomes about this zoonotic pathogen, so the bacteria or virus that can be transferred from the animal to the person as well.
Yeah, and the one thing is we got people that are bringing calves into their house, trying to warm them up and putting them in the bathtubs or putting them in their kitchens. And we see those pictures on Facebook, and I understand some of that in the history. But when you're dealing with a calf with a Salmonella typhimurium that's antibiotic resistance, we've seen cases where put the calf in the bathtub, take the calf back out, fill up the bathtub for Junior. He drinks the water and actually dies. And so really important to understand this.
Yeah, and certainly, the overall recommendation is treat them all like they make you sick, but getting that diagnosis can help in that, really determines what level of care and comfort do I need to be as far as transmitting those back into my household.
Yep, and Salmonella, Campylobacter, the coronaviruses can have both respiratory, reproductive, other issues that can go on in the herd, that just the diarrhea in the calf is just the clinical sign that we saw. There's something else smoldering.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to an individual disease syndrome. So when you look at an animal that's sick, that very rarely will get you down to this particular bacteria or virus, or sometimes it's nutritional or something else that's not related to infectious disease. And I think we get into this mindset of everything can be treated with something from a bottle, and that's often not the case. But we need the history, we need the right samples, we need all that to really drill down to what is causing that disease in your particular animal or your herd.
And you have another set of eyes. You get a veterinarian on your farm, they walk through there, you may not understand, or you might have forgot how deep the mud is. You might have forgot the shelter for the calves is not quite as up to snuff as what it used to be. Different things to that really go into that management, and working together in that veterinary client-patient relationship could be huge.
Absolutely.
Great. When we come back, we're going to wrap up with Dr. Lubbers on making sure that you get the right diagnosis and the right understanding for the health of your herd.
Good morning, I'm Matt Perrier from Eureka, Kansas. My family owns and operates Dale Banks Angus, which is in the southern Flint Hills of Kansas. We've had Angus cattle for 112 years. In 1904, my great-great-grandfather purchased his first Angus cows, and we've raised registered Angus cattle ever since. We've seen a variety of changes in that breed, and we've seen the power of Angus throughout the decades add profit to the commercial cow-calf segment, which is what our goal is to do. So some of the biggest strengths that the Angus breed have are the Certified Angus Beef program, which is one of the first branded beef programs that was ever introduced in the mid-70s. It has added value to Angus genetics, and it's increased and improved the demand and the interest in beef nationwide and worldwide, really. In addition to the Certified Angus Beef program, our Angus Genetics Incorporated, the breed improvement arm of our association, has enabled us as breeders and our customers as commercial cow-calf producers to find the genetics that are the most profitable, find the genetics that allow them to add performance or add fertility or whatever it is that their herd may need, and find genetics that can help them do that. So those two powerful programs as part of the American Angus Association have enabled us as seed stock producers and as an industry to grow profit within our business. If you're searching for bulls that offer genetic flexibility, then come to the Dale Banks Angus Bull Sale, Saturday, November 19th near Eureka, Kansas. Selling 140 bulls that have spent their lives in rough Flint Hills pastures. For 112 years, the Perriers have been focused on providing hard-working, balanced trait bulls for progressive cattlemen nationwide. Make plans to join us on November 19th or bid online at liveauctions.tv. Call the Perriers at 620-583-4305 or dalebanks.com.
Horn flies are a nuisance and a production loss, so getting rid of the problem is important. What I like about the vet gun is you don't have to go out there weekly to treat them with a topical fly applicant. It has some duration, it lasts. You see the increase in weight gain, it just works. I've used it on our 1,500 cow-calf operation, and it makes me more confident in saying, hey, this product's gonna work on your operation too.
Broadband has become as important to us as highways. That is why DocTalk is teaming up with NTCA, the Rural Broadband Association, and rural broadband companies like Blue Valley Telecommunications in fighting for quality broadband access through the program Smart Rural Communities.
I don't think we have any idea what's coming in the future. I couldn't have imagined 5 years ago what we're doing today. So in 2 years, I would guess there's things we can't imagine that we're going to be doing.
To learn more, visit ntca.org/smart or bluevalley.net.
It's easy to spot the man who uses Synanthic. With lower volume and less waste, Synanthic steps up your deworming routine. Get more deworming with less dewormer at Synanthic.com.
Beringer Ingelheim Vetmedica Inc. knows the importance of beef quality assurance and asks you to step up and get certified. Go to bqa.org for details.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. I'm pleased to be here and glad that we could snag Dr. Brian Lubbers. He has a busy schedule. He spends a lot of time on the road, wanted nationally and internationally for talks on beef cattle health and well-being and pharmacology and diagnostics, but he serves as our Director of Microbiology here in the Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory at Kansas State University. And let's jump into proper samples.
Sure.
Because you deal with that on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. And when we talk about diagnostics in the Diagnostic Lab, we talk about it as a process. And so the very first piece of that process is collecting the samples, getting a good history, and also shipping those samples, Dan. So, we want to make sure that if you're sending something to my laboratory and we're suspecting a bacteria is involved, we need to grow that bacteria. Well, that bacteria has to be alive when we get it in the lab. And so, getting that sample here as quickly as possible, keeping it as cool as possible, all helps to support that so that we can get the right diagnosis on our end for the veterinarian or the producer. Certainly histories, if we get good histories on our submission forms, that helps us. We may decide that this bacteria is more important, more likely, and so we may decide to culture a certain direction versus another one. All of those things matter because if we don't get the right samples, after that it's lost no matter how much we do on our end.
And the timing. I mean, don't leave an animal sit out until it's oddalized in the sun and we can't do anything with it. So you got to get on it, got to get the veterinarian called. The veterinarian's got to get there.
Yep. Yeah, and in Kansas in the summer, that window is probably as short as about 4 hours. So it really does need to be. We can certainly work with it up to a certain point. You're probably talking 8 to 12, somewhere in that ballpark. So you have a little bit of time, but it's certainly not days.
And you can move that animal to the shade. You can do some things to help preserve if the veterinarian's not going to get there till, they may have a call and get there a little bit later, but understand that we are racing the clock.
Yep. And one thing that's important too, we live in a digital age, Dan, so we always encourage people to take pictures. Everybody's got a camera in their pocket. Take pictures while you're doing the necropsy. Take pictures of the environment. It just gives us a better idea of what's going on.
Never thought of that. It's certainly something that would help with the history, help you better understand the size of the animal, the housing, the environment, and everything to that. So anything else on samples or?
I think just the last piece is we always encourage producers to work with veterinarian. And sometimes that relationship could be the veterinarian is training the producer how to do a necropsy. We can certainly do that. But really the veterinarian is that investigative piece. And so once you have that test result, what does that mean? We really want you to work with your local veterinarian because, yeah, the pictures help, but they understand your operation way better than we do sitting up here at the College of Veterinary Medicine.
Big time. And the interpretation of the results when they come back and getting things fixed on the farm. Thanks for being with us. Great show.
Thanks.
Thank you for being with us on DocTalk. Remember, always work with your local veterinarian. And if you want to find out about what we do here, you can find us on the web at www.doctalktv.com. Thanks for joining us on the show today. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson, and I'll see you down the road.
Closed caption brought to you by AgriLabs, the perfect pairing of performance and value.
For more information about this program or previous programs, go to DocTalkTV.com. DocTalk was brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.